Disclaimer. This is an audiobook recording performed for entertainment purposes through fair use. I do not claim any of the text being read to be mine or written by me. This is Twisted by Laurie Halse Anderson. Warning. This story is not for children. It contains talks of abuse, violence, assault, both sexual and physical, drugs, alcohol, and suicidal ideation. Listener discretion is advised. I spent the last Friday of summer vacation spreading hot, sticky tar across the roof of George Washington High. My companions were Dopey, Toothless, and Joe, the brain surgeon in charge of building maintenance. At least they were getting paid. I was working 40 feet above ground, breathing in sulfur fumes from Satan's vomitorium for free. Character building, my father said. Mandatory community service, the judge said. Court-ordered restitution for the foul deed. He nailed me with the bill for the damage I had done, which meant I had to sell my car and bust my hump at a landscaping company all summer. Oh, and he gave me 6 months of meetings with a probation officer who thought I was a waste of human flesh. Still, it was better than jail. I pushed the mop back and forth, trying to coat the seams evenly. Didn't want any rain getting into the building and destroying the classrooms. Didn't want to hurt the school, no sir, we sure didn't. Joe wandered over, looked at my work, and grunted. "We done yet?" asked Dopey. "Thunderstorms rolling in soon. Heavy weather." I looked up. There were no clouds in the sky. Joe nodded slowly, studying the roof. "Yeah, we're done." He turned off the motor to the tar kettle. "Last day for Tyler here. Bet you're glad to be quit of us, huh, kid?" "Nah," I lied. "You guys have been great." Dopey cracked. "If the sewer pipes back up again, we'll get you out of class." There had been a few advantages to working with these guys. They taught me how to steal sodas out of the vending machines. I snagged a couple of keys when they weren't looking. Best of all, the hard labor had turned me from nerd boy into Tyler, the amazing Hulk, with ripped muscles and enough testosterone to power a nuclear generator. "Get a load of this," Toothless shouted. We picked our way around the fresh tarred patches and looked over at what he was pointing at, 4 stories down. I stayed away from the edge. I wasn't so good at heights. But then I saw them. Angels with ponytails gathered in the parking lot. The girls' tennis team, wearing bikini tops and short shorts. Wearing wet bikini tops and short shorts. I inched closer. It was a car wash, and the vehicles lined up all the way down the road, mostly driven by guys. Barely clad girls were bending, stretching, soaping up, scrubbing and squealing. They were squirting each other with hoses. And squealing. Did I mention that? "Take me now, Lord," Toothless muttered. The marching band was practicing in the teacher's lot. They fired up their version of Louie Louie. Finely toned angel butts bounced back and forth to the beat. Then the goddess rose up from the hubcap of a white Ford Explorer. Bethany, Milbury. The driver of the Explorer said something. Bethany smiled and blew at the soap buds in her hand, so the bubbles floated through the air and landed on his nose. The driver melted into a puddle in the front seat. Bethany threw back her head and laughed. The sun flashed off her teeth. Joe's tongue dropped out of his mouth and sizzled on the hot roof. Dopey took off his glasses, rubbing them on the corner of his shirt, and put them back on. Toothless adjusted himself. Bethany bounced along to the next car, a dark green Avenger that was burning oil. Bethany Milbury pushes me up against the hood of my cherry red turbocharged Terrosa. "I love fast cars," she whispers, soapy fingers in my hair. "This is the fastest," I say. "I've been waiting so long for you, Tyler." Her head tilts, her lips open. I am so ready for this. She grabs my arm and snarls, "Be careful, dummy. You'll break your neck." "No, wait." I blinked. I was on the hot tar roof with the 3 smelly grown men. Joe was gripping my arm, yanking me back from the edge. I said, "Be careful, dummy. That first step is a doozy." "Sorry," I said. Thanks." A navy blue 1995 Mercedes S500 sedan rolls into the parking lot. It came to a complete stop. Left blinker flashing, it turned and parked in front of the building. A man in a black suit got out of the driver's seat, stood next to the car, looked up at me and tapped the face of his watch once, twice, 3 times. I had inconvenienced him again. Dopey, Toothless, and Joe crawled out of sight. They had seen my father detonate before. 2. On the public humiliation scale, being picked up in Dad's car was better than being picked up in Mom's. Yes, it had a couple of rust spots and 162,000 miles on it, but at least it was a Benz. Mom drove an ancient Suburban, beige, dented from encounters with mailboxes and trees. If I had my own car back, it would have been best. When I came out the front door, he pointed to the trunk gaping open. I stripped off my sweatshirt, boots, and wet socks and dumped them in the cardboard box stuck in a nest of investment brochures and bungee cords. I left my jeans on. Even Dad knew it would not be cool to strip down to my boxers in front of the school. "Hurry up," he called. I sat on the beach towel laid on the back seat. Wouldn't want to mess up the leather. His cell phone rang. His lips curled slightly, and then he saw... His cell phone rang. His lip curled slightly when he saw the number on the screen. He answered the phone. "What is it now?" "Meet my father. Corporate tool." He had always been a hard ass, but since his latest promotion, he dialed it up. "That's not my problem," he told the phone. "It's yours. Solve it." Mom stared at him from the passenger seat, then sighed deeply. It was Friday afternoon, which means that they had just come from their therapy session. They were recovering the joys of their relationship. "Hi, Mom," I said. She looked back and gave me a small wave. Her smile was fake, like a piece of paper that had a smile drawn on it that had been glued to her face. As I buckled my seatbelt, Dad ended his call and started the engine. "I still don't know why you insist on picking him up every day," he told Mom. "It wouldn't kill him to ride his bike." Mom's smile fell off. She blinked hard and studied the dust on the dashboard. "Meet my mother. Pet photographer, cake baker, a nice lady who smells faintly of gin." Dad put the car in reverse and glanced at me in the mirror. "We have an office barbecue tonight," he said. "I suppose it's too late for you to get a haircut before then." I shook my bangs in front of my eyes. "I don't want to go. I expect you and your sister to be ready by 7 o'clock. "I have plans," I said, which is not exactly true, but sounded good. "Change them." Dad looked beyond me. Damn it. We were blocked in by the cars lined up to be washed. Dad shifted back into park and turned off the engine. "Don't want to waste gas," he muttered. His phone rang again. He answered it without a word, listening for a moment, then launched into a rant about federal regulations and the inter-office memos. Mom rolled down her window and waved at one of the tennis players soaping up a Volvo. She waved at Bethany Milbury. The Bethany Milbury. Bethany? Waved back. I thought the tar fumes had made me delusional. She's been in my homeroom since 7th grade. She had a starring role in most of my fantasies since then, too. But this was real. Bethany Milbury, holy goddess of hotness, floated toward our car. She put her clean hands with perfect fingernails on my mother's door and leaned forward, straining the top of her bikini to the max. "Hey, Tyler," Bethany said to me. I had this weird rushing noise in my ears. My jeans tightened near the zipper. "Ha," I said. "Hey, ha, idiot, moron, cretin, fool." Mom said something about the party. Bethany looked surprised for a second, but then Mom mentioned pasta salad, and I stopped listening because a drop of water slipped from Bethany's collarbone down to her cleavage. I leaned forward for a better view of the water crawling, millimeter by millimeter, down the golden, soft canyon of her. Ow! Both Mom and Bethany stopped talking to stare at me. "Did you hit your head, Tyler?" Mom asked. "Are you okay?" Bethany asked. "Ha!" I said. As we pulled out of the parking lot, I pressed my face back against the back window to watch her walk away. Bethany was the alpha female of George Washington High. The most beautiful, the most popular, the queen bee. She was also the daughter of my dad's boss and the sister of the guy who had been making my life hell for years. And me? I was a zit on the butt of the student body. I had a screwed up past and no visible future. My chances of hooking up with anything female, much less Bethany, were small. But anything could happen on the last Friday of summer vacation. 3. The Milburys lived in the Hampton Club and Estates, 10 blocks and 50 million miles away from our house. It was close enough to walk to and far enough that we should have chartered a jet. My parents were struggling wannabes of the upper middle class. The Milburys, the people they wanted to be. "I can't believe you're making us do this," Hannah bitched as we pulled out of our driveway at precisely 7 p.m. "Why can't we stay home?" Mom balanced a 2-gallon plastic bowl of pasta salad on her lap. "Don't whine." "I'm not whining." Dad slowed down to go around a pothole. "You're whining about not whining." "How can you say that?" Hannah asked. "In English," Dad said, "so you should be able to understand it." "Enough," Mom said. "We're going to a party. Can't we have some fun?" Dad cleared his throat. "This is not a party," he corrected. "It's a business function. We're going to put in a family appearance. I need 10 minutes of FaceTime with Bryce, and then we can leave. I expect everyone to be on their best behavior." His eyes found mine in the rearview mirror, including you. Dad likes to pretend I'm a dangerous criminal because of the foul deed, but it was a stupid prank. I mean, all pranks are stupid, but that's kind of the point, isn't it? Last time anyone noticed me, in a good way, was in 3rd grade when I won the home run contest during field day. After that, my reputation struck out every time. I was the shortest guy in middle school and too chicken to hit back. I had victim tattooed on my forehead. Got a little better when I got to high school. I became invisible, your average piece of drywall who spent too much time playing computer games. Girls would look straight at me and never see the writhing masculine beast hidden inside my 135 pounds of veal white man flesh. So at the end of my junior year, I decided to do something bold. A prank that would turn me into a legend. At 3 o'clock in the morning on Monday, May 1st, I used 5 cans of spray paint to decorate George Washington High with words that proclaim the superiority of the junior class and a couple crude remarks about the manhood of Principal Hughes. I misspelled phenomenal and testicles. I also forgot one of the cans, the red one. I was also so flustered trying to finish before the sun came up that I didn't notice my wallet was missing until the police arrived on our front porch. "Best behavior," Dad repeated. "Be an asset, not a liability." Hannah made a face at the back of his pointy head. I stared at him in the mirror until he looked away. 4. The Milbury's house was what you would expect. Monstrously big and slightly tacky. "It's gorgeous," Mom said. "So tasteful. What a beautiful fountain." Dad muttered something under his breath. He wiped the sweat off his forehead with the back of his hand. Wisps of barbecue smoke and jazz drifted from the backyard. We came to a screeching halt as we rounded the corner of the house. "Whoa," Hannah said. "Yeah." A massive swimming pool, complete with hot tub and waterfall, took up a third of the yard and was ringed by a broad patio and burning tiki torches. A jazz quartet was playing at the far end, close to the bar. Right in front of us were 2 tented pavilions, one for food and one filled with tables and chairs. A pig was roasting on a giant spit, and a cook was slapping down burgers on the grill. Waiters buzzed around with trays of food, snacks, and glasses of wine and imported beer in dark bottles. The golf course, a Hampton Estate park, stretched out beyond the rose garden. The place was packed. People standing, sitting, eating, drinking, dancing, flirting, frowning, laughing, practicing pretend golf swings and watching each other. It was mostly adults, but the hot tub was filled with half the lacrosse team, and a couple of other kids from school were scattered around the patio. The rich kids. The really rich kids. You know what they look like. Mom yanked Dad out of view. "How could you do this to me?" she hissed. "This isn't casual, and it absolutely is not potluck." Dad frowned. The memo said casual. Casual means potluck. Everybody knows that. "Memo?" Mom's voice went up. "What memo? You said Bryce invited you personally." "Be quiet," Dad said. "Here comes Doreen." Mom handed the pasta salad to Hannah, who turned and handed it to me. "Get rid of it," Mom whispered. I bent down and snuck the bowl up beneath a bush. When I stood up, Bethany and her mom were talking to my parents. Bethany was wearing a long Hawaiian skirt thing, tied around her hips, and a see-through lace shirt over her bikini top. The peanut butter-colored cat she was carrying obstructed my view. Mrs. Milbury was an older, thinner version of her daughter, with a tan that made her skin look like tired leather sofa, and very large, very white teeth. Mrs. Milbury gave me the once-over. "My goodness, Tyler," she said. "You used to be 4'0" and skinny as a beanpole. You certainly have grown up." "He's 6'3" and 195, Mom said, "growing taller every day like a cornstalk." Hannah snorted. "Ah," I said, cringing. "Ha!" Dad tapped his foot and waited a suave 2 seconds before blurting out, "So, where's Bryce?" 5. Bryce Milbury, CEO of Milbury Brothers Trust, Milbury Brothers Trust, was a tall man with a perfect tan and a gold watch, motioning to Mrs. Milbury from the far side of the pool. 3 shorter guys were grouped around him, all wearing lime green golf shirts with the company logo. As we walked up, his son Chip did too. Chip Milbury, Bethany's evil twin brother, 4-year lacrosse starter, fairly good offensive linebacker, and all-American jerk who majored in beating the crap out of me in middle school. We did more of the fake polite handshake thing. Mr. Milbury held onto Dad's hand for an extra moment. "Surprised to see you here, Bill," he said. "Didn't know your department was coming." The short dweeb guys looked at each other. I knew in the pit of my stomach that Dad had screwed up. You didn't crash parties at the Hampton Estate, even if you were the new vice president of oversight and compliance. Not cool. Dad gripped his boss's hand harder. "You know me, Bryce. Always looking out for the company's best interests." Yeah, he actually said that. "So, nerd boy," Chip punched me on the shoulder. "Hard. They let you out of prison?" "Tyler didn't go to prison." Mom shut her mouth when Dad shook his head once. Mr. Milbury looked over at me. "You playing football, Tyler?" "No, sir," I said. "I've just been working." "Part of his parole," Chip said. "My job," I said slowly. "I worked at Pirelli's Landscaping." Mr. Milbury squeezed my bicep. "Maybe you should do some manual labor, Chip. This guy's made of steel." Chip stood up straight, trying to make himself as tall as me. "How much can you press?" "I have no idea." 250-pound sacks of mulch in each hand, douchebag. "You 2 boys should work out together," Mr. Milbury said. "Looks like you'd be a good match." "We're not matched," Chip said. The band broke into La Macarena. A few women jumped out of their seats, formed a line at the edge of the pool, and flailed their arms around. Mom and Mrs. Milbury wiggled their hips. Hannah slunk off toward the food tent. Bethany managed to look incredibly bored and incredibly hot at the same time. "You can bring Tyler to the gym," Mr. Milbury suggested to Dad. "I'll meet you there with Chip. We're always looking for someone to push him to the next level." Chip blinked fast and pretended to watch the pig turning on the spit. "That would be great," Dad said. "I'll tell Linda. Now, if I could just borrow you for a few minutes, Bryce. The situation in Omaha is uglier than I thought. The new regulations." One of the dweebs whispered something into Mr. Milbury's ear. Dad snapped his mouth shut and tried not to frown. "This is not the place for business. You can call Stuart here on Monday," Mr. Milbury said. "We'll set up a meeting." He turned away from my father and patted my shoulder. "I don't know, Chipper. I think Tyler might be out of your league." "Let's find out," Chip said, and sat down at a small table and placed his elbow square in the middle, palm open. "What do you say, Tyler? Think you can take me?" "Knock it off, Chip," Bethany said. "Chicken?" Chip asked. "Great idea," Mr. Milbury said. "I'll bet you a round of golf, Bill. Your boy against mine. What do you say? You like golf, don't you?" "Brack," Chip clucked softly. "I love golf," Dad lied. "Go ahead, Tyler." "All right." I sat down across from Chip and planted my right elbow next to his. A crowd quickly gathered around our table. He wiggled his fingers and grabbed my hand. I let him squeeze without fighting back. The left corner of his mouth twisted up in a half grin. There were no calluses on his palm. "This won't take long," Chip said to his buddies. "On my count," Mr. Milbury said. "Start on 3. Chip opened his hand and regripped. This time I squeezed before he did. He blinked. 1, Mr. Milbury said. The band played Long Macarena faster. 2. 3. Chip didn't wait for his father to finish the word. I didn't think he would. I was ready. When he pushed, my forearm hardened into a steel gritter planted in the cement. Chip frowned when my arm didn't budge. He took a deep breath and tried to curl his hand over mine. I drove it back and tested the strength of his arm. He had nothing on me. The lacrosse guys yelled at Chip to put me away. Chip glanced up at his father. I kept staring straight at him. Our arms were shaking, making the table wobble on the uneven slate. Chip was breathing harder. I could smell the pizza he ate, the beer he drank, and the Tic Tacs he used to cover them up. Mr. Milbury stepped closer to the table. "Looks like we have ourselves a draw, folks." "No, we don't," Chip said. My father moved behind his boss, pretending that he wanted a better angle to watch. "You want to quit?" I asked. "Shut up," Chip said. The song ended. "Do it, Tyler," Bethany said. Boiling blood filled my arm, white hot with strength. "Do it!" Staring dead into Chip's eyes, I powered his arm backward 1 inch. Another inch. I could see how this was going to end. I would take him down smoothly, pushing his hand down toward the tabletop, forcing him out of his seat so his shoulder wouldn't be ripped out of the socket. And then I made the mistake of looking at my dad. He shook his head just a little bit from side to side. I closed my eyes and let my enemy win. 6. Chip leaped up, balled his fists, and screamed, "Yeah!" The crowd around us fell silent. A couple of lacrosse players congratulated Chip and jumped in the pool. The dweebs reached for new beers. Mrs. Milbury drifted toward the band. Dad watched the guys play in the water. Bethany was the only person who looked me in the eye. "Good job. Fair fight," said Mr. Milbury. "Almost had you there, Chipper. Better watch your back. Ha ha. Now shake hands like men." Chip ignored his father and shadowboxed one of his henchmen, a kid named Parker with perfect teeth and acne scars. "Chipper," Mr. Milbury repeated, a little louder. The last thing Chip wanted to do was shake my hand. Instead, he shoved Parker, who backpedaled and fell into the pool, hitting the water with a loud smack. "Son!" Mr. Milbury's voice snapped through the air like a wet towel in a locker room. Chip froze for a second, then walked back to me, his hand extended. "Fair fight," he said. "Something like that," I said. I smiled and squeezed his hand until the bones ran together like dry twigs. He grunted and covered his pain with a cough. I kept squeezing. Mr. Milbury had no clue. He patted me on the back. "Maybe we should have Tyler do our landscaping," he said. "I bet he'd work better than those illegals Doreen is always hiring." "Sure thing, Mr. Milbury," I said, releasing Chip's hand. Dad stepped forward. "Bryce, I really don't think this can wait until Monday. If we could sit down for just a few minutes." Time for a toast." Waiters were hurrying through the crowd, passing out champagne. At the microphone, Mrs. Milbury tapped on her glass with a spoon. "Have a drink, Bill," Mr. Milbury said, waving over a waiter. "Whatever the problem is, I know you'll fix it. Relax. Enjoy being out with the family." One of the dweebs snickered. That's why I wasn't ready. Chip reached out and patted me on the back like his father had, but instead of a friendly pat, he smacked me as hard as he could. The blow sent me flying toward Bethany and the waiters loaded with their champagne trays. The world downshifted in slow motion. The waiters stumbled and their trays flew up. Bethany stepped backwards, then fell. My arms tried to catch her. My legs fought for balance. All the dads and dweebs stood, frozen, mouth open. The trays came down and 50 champagne glasses hit the patio. 1,000,000 shards of glass and champagne exploded. Bethany screamed, and as time sped up, just before I hit the ground, I noticed one more thing. Bethany was barefoot. She screamed. We went down in a heap of speckled glass and blood. Chip vanished into the roses. 7. Half the Milbury Brothers Trust Board of Directors were doctors. By the time the ambulance had arrived, they'd stopped the bleeding and taken out most of the glass, but Bethany still needed a shot and stitches to the bottom of her foot. The ambulance left, lights flashing, no sirens. My mom retrieved her pasta salad from the bushes and put it in the car. Then she came back and patted my hand while one of the doctors looked me over and patched me up with 6 butterfly bandages. Hannah stayed right next to me. Dad had disappeared. We finally found him practicing spin control with his boss, trying to convince Mr. Milbury to sue the company that had laid the slate around the pool because they clearly did a shoddy job, which had led to such a dangerous condition and the unfortunate accident. Before we left, I found one of the doctors who had helped me and quietly asked him to slit my throat. The guy said no and suggested I talk to my family doc about antidepressants. 8. I spent most of Friday night playing Toffet. The graphics weren't great and it made my computer freeze regularly, but it was better than lying awake and loathing myself for hurting Bethany. Toffet was hell. The point of the game was to make your demon as powerful as possible and survive through 66 levels of torment. After that, I wasn't sure what would happen. Either he'd escape to heaven or descend to the final pit and be crowned the Lord of Darkness. It was unclear which option was better. As soon as I opened up the game, a herd of fallen angels swarmed my demon Gormley. They tied him up and stuck him in one of the boiling cauldrons. It took forever to annihilate them. My fingers hit the button in the right sequence over and over. It normally sounded cool when he scored a kill. Lots of hissing and yowling. But I had to keep it down so Dad didn't hear me playing. See, that's why I was a bad son. Lack of respect. Miller men were disciplined. Miller men followed rules. Miller men toughed it out. They ate dirt and went for the kill. That last one was a real quote. Dad said it to me when I was 11, after I lost the Little League championship. The ball had been hit square to the shortstop, and I took too much of a lead, so I was trapped between third and home. Dad screamed for me to go, so I went, and I slid, and I was tagged by the catcher. Grandpa Miller told Dad I was a pansy for not taking out the catcher's legs, and I didn't want it bad enough, and Dad agreed with him. Mom lost it in a very controlled way, and told them they were both lunatics. She dragged me and Hannah home, so I missed going out with the team for hot dogs after the game. I got stuck on level 42. Gormley couldn't get past the sulfur fits. Every time I tried to teach him how to swim, he drowned. Stupid demon. I made a note to myself to look for a life jacket he could buy, swallowed 4 ibuprofen, and went to bed just before 3:30. 9. My alarm went off at 5 the next morning. My first thought? It was a bad dream. Second thought? No, it was not. Third thought? Crap. I tried to eat some potato chips for breakfast, but I couldn't choke them down. I threw a bunch of lunch stuff in a grocery bag, grabbed a gallon of iced tea out of the fridge, and headed outside. Yoda was waiting for me on the steps, holding a lunch his mom had packed for him in an insulated bag. His energy drinks were in the cooler that he was sitting on. He looked up from his comic book. Thought you might have left the country. Yoda wasn't his real name, of course. Calvin Hodges was renamed Yoda after he flipped out about Star Wars in the 5th grade. He spent way too much time gaming, more than me even, and he could mind meld hard drives. But Star Wars? That wasn't a geek thing for him. It was his religion. When the assholes of the world beat him up for this, he'd act like a Buddhist monk being tormented by communist soldiers. He'd smile, freak him out. The Force was with him. You heard? I asked. Everybody heard, moron. He picked up the cooler and followed me down the walk. They heard that you went on a rampage and attacked Bethany Milbury. That you almost got hauled away in handcuffs. And that Bethany almost died. It wasn't like that at all. It was an accident. But I don't want to talk about it. Did you punch Chip in the mouth? I'm gonna punch you in the mouth if you don't shut up. All right. God, you're so touchy. There's the truck. It was a 15-minute ride in Purelli's pickup truck to Evergreen Haven, the nursing home where we sent my grandparents to die. Purelli gave out the assignments. The Honduran guys were in charge of mowing. Yoda had to hedge the flower beds and blow the sidewalks clean. I had to run the weed whacker and dig a hole for the blue sprouts using a pick and a shovel. Ask your buddy for help, Purelli said when I complained. We both looked at Yoda, slathering SPF 50 sunscreen on his arms. He was hired out of desperation after most of the regular crew went back to college. Good luck, the boss chuckled as he turned and jumped into his truck. I decapitated dandelions all morning, leaving carnage and death strewn in my path. When Yoda whistled for our lunch break, I walked over to the white oak that would give us some decent shade. I stripped off my shirt and hung it over a branch, then poured ice water over my head and let it cut through the sweat and dirt caked around my neck. Yoda was eating a white bread, mayo, lettuce, bologna sandwich cut into 4 pieces that he'd had every day since 1st grade. I pulled out my half loaf of bread and peanut butter and jelly jars from my grocery bag and slapped together 3 sandwiches, which I inhaled, stopping only to guzzle iced tea. The Honduran guys found their own patch of shade to eat in. I dumped out some Oreos and tossed the package to Yoda. So, like I was saying, he said as he pulled out a cookie, everybody thinks you got busted again. You weren't saying anything, and we're not talking about it. He twisted the Oreo open. Are we talking about school then? Hell no. What about the Sith Lord and the Congress theory? Not. I looked in my bag again. I'd forgotten the Doritos. Can we talk about Hannah? I put the jars back in the bag and drained the last of the iced tea. Friends don't date friends' sisters. It's a rule. Back to work. Rules are made to be broken. I've been IMing every night with her, you know. Yoda scraped the icing off his Oreo. She thinks I'm sweet. He stuck the cookie halves together and devoured them. Look, this Bethany thing will blow over. Relax, you should. Shut up, Yoda. I left my shirt hanging on the tree and went back to work. The 5-foot circumference of the hole I was supposed to dig was marked with pink spray paint. I just had to make the hole as deep as the circle was wide. I used my boots to push the shovel blade into the dirt, bent my knees, put my back into lifting, and then lifted. 10 minutes into work, I was sweating. Half an hour and I was dripping. After a while, my cuts and bruises stopped hurting, and the whine of the edger and mower faded away. It was just the slice of the shovel in the ground and the pounding of my heart as I muscled it out of the hole. An inch at a time, a foot at a time, I was good at digging holes. It was the rest of life I sucked at. Then I hit rocks. Check that. Many rocks. And the dirt turned into dried cement. So I had to use the pick to loosen it. Then mowers swept by, blasting cut grass and exhaust. I kept digging. Pick first, then shovel. Pick and shovel. Break, then dig. An inch, 3 inches, another foot down. The sun was roaring overhead, cooking everything. Sweat ran down my back and arms. Salt penetrated the bandages the doc had given me. The sting was sweet. Days like this, I thought maybe I should just blow off school, move to Minnesota or something, get a job that let me sweat and never, ever think again. I swung the pick harder, putting my back into it until the sun and the stick and the buzz and the pain blurred together. And then Yoda was standing above me with Mr. Pirelli next to him. Somehow the afternoon had vanished and it was time to go home. I handed up my tools. The two of them reached down and helped me and added the crater I had dug. "Isn't that a little deep?" Yoda asked. "It'll help the roots get established," I explained. "Established where? China?" The truck stopped at our corner and we crawled out. Mr. Pirelli reminded me to call him about my schedule now that school was starting. He'd take as many hours as I could give, he said, especially if I wanted to dig holes. It might have been a compliment, but I was too tired to be sure. I trudged next to Yoda, my boots clomping on the sidewalk like monster feet. "You want to come over?" Yoda asked. "Where?" "To my house, to take over the galaxy. Duh. Or we could just hang out. Whatever. We have leftover lasagna." "Nah, I'm good. Thanks." We stood there for a second, gnats swarming in front of our faces. He swatted at them. "I think you should come over." "I'm okay, really," I said. "I'm going to bed, and if I can't sleep, I'll come over." He nodded. "You riding with me Monday?" "Nope. I'll be taking the bus with Hannah." "Cool. May the force be with you, my friend." "We're seniors, Yoda. You gotta stop saying that." My house was dark and quiet. No dinner, no note on the counter. Maybe my family had joined the witness protection program in exchange for testifying about what a loser I was. I stood in the shower until the water swirling around the drain wasn't black. 2 of the butterfly bandages on my left forearm peeled off. I poured peroxide on the gaping cuts until they went numb. When I went back down to the kitchen, I saw a line of light under the closet door next to the basement. I filled the mixing bowl with an entire box of Lucky Charms and ate it with a serving spoon. The goal was to finish the cereal before falling asleep face down in the milk. After I put the bowl in the dishwasher, I opened up the basement door. Dad was down there typing on his computer and talking to himself. Opera was playing low in the background. "Tyler?" Dad called. "Is someone up there? Linda?" There had actually been a time when Dad was cool. Like when I was in the 3rd grade, when he was an accountant at a hole-in-the-wall company. If you were going to make a documentary about our family, that would have been the year. Nobody had a shrink. Mom worked part-time at the school library and took photos for fun. Hannah only bit me if I made her really, really mad. And Dad and me won first place at both the father-son knot tying competition and the three-legged race at the Cub Scout Wilderness Weekend. Those were the days, by golly. Now he was a dragon hiding in the skin of a small man. In public, he'd act like a human being, all handshakes and good to meet you, and grown-up BS about the stock market and going bald. In private, the skin would slide off, and all you saw were slime-colored scales and poisonous claws because a branch of office was in trouble or a new regulation was hurting the bottom line. "Hello?" Dad demanded. I closed the door. Mom's room was to the right at the top of the staircase. Dad was on the opposite end of the hall. Hannah and I were in the middle, her door closest to Mom's and mine closest to Dad's. I flopped on my stomach, feet flung over the edge of the mattress. It was the last Saturday night before my senior year of high school, and I was alone in my room. The curtains moved. Kids were playing kickball in the street, yelling about fouls and do-overs and who was safe. Engines raced and tires peeled out a couple blocks away. Music came up from the open window. The train whistled blue. If you took the train to Cleveland, you could pick up the Capital Limited and ride it to Chicago, and from Chicago transfer to anywhere. I rolled over onto my back and prayed again to every god I had ever learned about to let me die. Quick and painless, please. Death is funny when you really think about it. Everybody does it, but nobody knows how, exactly how. My Grandpa Miller just would not die, no matter how sick he got. Grandma Barnett dropped dead in front of the canned vegetables at Safeway. Did they like it? Was it a relief? I wasn't supposed to think about that, but it was like porn. The idea would sneak in and boom, I was off. Like when they put me in the holding cell after they arrested me for the foul deed, and the guard came back and took the laces out of my sneakers, and then the door locked and my sneakers looked pathetic and I couldn't walk in them. And I thought about it. As soon as it started, I'd go, I'm not going to think about this. No matter what, I am thinking about something different now. Thinking. And the pictures would flash over and over in my mind like a demented video with no music. Just bodies falling off of bridges and planes flying into skyscrapers. And fires and ropes and guns and driving very fast. Unbuckling my seatbelt, aiming for the cliff at the granite quarry. Stomping the accelerator, passing 90 when I hit the edge. Flying, then plunging to the bottom. The car bouncing off the slabs of granite, spinning, crumbling, the explosion. Thinking about death relaxed me as usual. My open cuts dripped onto the sheets. Gone.